This is Michael Mavroudis. He's the
community liaison.
The community liaison at the FreeSwitch project, and today he'll be talking to you about training.
Yeah, so I'm going to be the person performing the training in a couple of days, but we're just going to do a quick overview and to discuss a little bit of some of the things we're going to go over, but also go over the history of FreeSwitch. And you know, one of the things I like to do is as a community liaison, I really like to get to know my constituents, so I'm going to call on some of you. So it's going to be a little bit of a hybrid presentation. That's me a couple of years ago. I'm like a realtor. It's probably a 10-year-old picture. I was much better looking back then. Again, I'm associated with FreeSwitch. And then also, I run a VoIP provider. Okay, FreeSwitch is an open source carrier-grade telephony platform implemented as a back-to-back user agent. Because of its design, we can perform a great number of different tasks from a PBX to a transit switch, text and speech conversations, audio and video conferencing, and an extensive feature set. It's easy to install. WebRTC implementation, eliminating the need for auxiliary endpoints. It has a modular design. Mods and applications augment FreeSwitch with additional functionalities. Create your own custom modules. Supports many common languages, codes, file formats, and protocols. So, who here uses FreeSwitch? Okay, that's good. Who here has used FreeSwitch in the past? Okay, so we have most of the room. That's good. I like that. So this stuff is all going to be relatively simple for you. Okay, so these are the fundamentals of the design. It's got a threaded model, so it does parallel processing. Protected core, which makes it stable. We like that. And so you have the dynamic modules, but essentially what we have here is we have these different modules, and this is how they all tie in and connect to each other. Some are endpoints, and so detailed event logger system, and basically it hooks into everything. So it's this kind of, it's this architecture that really gives the stability and the scalability, and really is the core of the success of what makes FreeSwitch what it is, and we're very proud of it. So what does FreeSwitch do besides produce puppies? WebRTC support. I'm not really going to go over these. We pretty much know what these all are, right? Okay, so it's got a lot of features. It's all class 5 features. Everybody needs some of these features. And the question is, how do we implement them, right? And how do we implement them in an efficient and effective manner? And so that's kind of one of the things that this class touches upon. Applications. And a little cat. Okay, so these are kind of the main categories. This is what a lot of people, these are very common use cases. Voicemail, conference, you know, that type of stuff. Fax, parking, supporting codecs. We support a lot of codecs. And one of the strengths is transcoding. So we effectively transcode a lot of that. Right? And this is how everything kind of ties in together from the codecs to the commercial formats. Just like the pieces of a puzzle, they all kind of tie together. Okay, so supported protocols. Mod Sophia, obviously, is at the core of a lot of everything that FreeSwitch really kind of does. But when it comes to some of the RTC stuff, but UDP, TCP, TLS, RFC 3261 compliant, SIP 2.0, IP6 support, SIP session timers, RTT timers, SRV connector. This is really what it does. It's just the general things. Supported languages. This is how we can all kind of tie things together, right? If you're building custom applications, there are a lot of options. And of course, we want to keep it secure. ZRTP, written by Phil Zimmerman. He's a character. But that actually works really well in that scenario. And then, as well as other secure methods of communication. Okay, so what are the reasons to use FreeSwitch, right? Why do we use FreeSwitch? When it comes to, classified functionality sets, for a lot of people, it's the to-go open source software. I mean, when it really comes down to it, between, FreeSwitch and other open source packages, we've infused the economy with billions of dollars, and really have changed the way people communicate. And it's really up to the future generations to use these platforms in order to enable future forms of communication. So reliability, that goes back to the core. It's just from a core design standpoint, it works. And scalability. Well, we can knock out some call concurrencies. There's no question about that. So, with so many different features and applications, how do we actually make up our mind what we're going to do, right? And so, there's a lot of different use cases. Rating and routing server, of course, B2B UA. That's at the very base. IVR and announcement server, conference server, voicemail server. Some of the biggest operators use FreeSwitch as a voicemail server. Session border control. I mean, that's probably one of the most common uses, which in turn ties into topology, right? What exactly is a session border controller? I mean, it's like constantly been up to debate. Fax server and PBX. There's some really nice GUIs that use FreeSwitch, Fusion PBX, and 2600 hertz, namely. And so, they do a great job of creating beautiful front ends to make it easy for the end user experience to really kind of set up basic class 5 services. Okay, so the question is, how do we take it to the next stage? We have high availability, true scalability, and security, right? And so these are the things that integrating FreeSwitch with OpenSIPs really bring in. We get up to a certain level with FreeSwitch, it works really great, but how do we start really scaling, right? And so the wonderful guys at OpenSIPs have done some really special things. We put it in the center, right? We've all seen this model a million times, right? But what's really nice is some of the custom features that were actually specifically authored for FreeSwitch. So we have dispatcher and load balancer. Essentially, through the event socket layer, it can see the CPU utilization and dispatch based on utilization. And so why do we want that or need that? Well, it's just efficient, right? So if we have out of a core of, we saw like 5 free switches, 6 free switches there. If one spiked, well then it's not going to get false, right? It's more of a fair load balance there, and then event socket layer. That is really cool. Came out in like version 2.3, I think. Sit on the event socket layer and you can dispatch events directly from OpenSlips. And that's just, it's unbelievable. The type of things you could do with that, are amazing. So when it comes down to it, this is what the training is going to teach the people in the class. Very basic. How do we install FreeSwitch? How do we install the Virto communicator? And so that sometimes becomes a little bit of a challenge for some people. Registering and making calls between endpoints. Got to make sure we got that right. But then that also ties into RPC calls. Administer various configuration files. Okay, this is what it comes down to. We're going to provide you with a lot of the configurations and variables that will really help you with your configs. Some of them undocumented. As we know, the wiki and Confluence is a community effort. And there's, not all the functionality of FreeSwitch is really there. So this will help people who are starting out and want to get to learn FreeSwitch and get to know FreeSwitch. It's going to teach them, really how to get started from a very strong perspective. So enable and configure modules, start modules, video conferencing, FreeSwitch CLI usage. Registering gateways, getting encryption up and running. Okay, so this is when I start calling out to the audience. So essentially, everything is so personalized when you're implementing infrastructure. And so I'd like to hear from the people here how they use FreeSwitch and what they'd like to learn out of FreeSwitch. And so the first person I call on is Shlomi.
Yeah! So, should I come over?
Yeah, come on up. You want to come up?
So, just like a few points, like from our perspective, we are a voice center. We're going to speak a little bit more about ourselves tomorrow, but we are having microphone. Yeah.
Turn it on.
Yeah. Now it's working. Yeah. Now. So, just as speaking with Mike about his presentation and everything, we were realizing a lot of people are usually not starting using FreeSwitch in the beginning, and later on, just after having the needs for it, are doing it. So I guess one of the things that was very important to discuss are when are those positions and when are those needs that are bringing us as a community member moving from other project more into FreeSwitch. And I guess for us it was especially the ability of the flexibility of the project to be very scalable and very fast to produce. So
and also you in particular had some really had some more to work a lot on DLF. Right?
We had a lot of issues, especially when using other projects whilst trying to maintain the synchronization of the states. If it's on present stuff on class 5 applications like Q, or any other stuff that do need the ability to communicate on the state of the application much better through than just giving an API. So FreeSwitch really giving you a lot of abilities, the DIE plans and the ability to write those applications inside it. It's much better. It's not like we throw all of our AGI and lab of Fastrex 4 years away, but looking for the future and looking for a telecom needs, there is a lot of interesting things on FreeSwitch that I guess that if we would start in the beginning, we would probably choose different. But after knowing more and more about the project, it seems like that is really more direct being there for people like us that like to break it all and fix it all around in a better way with the way to customize it for our business team.
So, and that happens when you start playing with infrastructure. That's
exactly. So really thank you for FreeSwitch to having a wonderful project and giving us the ability to build great tools.
Okay, so let's walk around a little bit. I saw you put up your hand.
Yes, hello.
So tell me about yourself a little bit.
Okay, I'd like test. Okay, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to know. We don't use FreeSwitch. I'd like to know best practices because today we talked a lot regarding high availability, Anycast, BGP. I'd like to know more about why I have to choose FreeSwitch for horizontal scaling and what are the best practices for doing that. To build a high available infrastructure, let's say for voicemail, to expand our voicemail needs.
Okay, so there are some specific settings in FreeSwitch.
Regarding the file system, management, configuration management, XML files.
Yeah. So, what exactly do you consider high availability? So, is it like call takeover and?
Let's take it to the horizontal scale.
Okay, that could be a little. That is something that could be a little bit challenging.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so
you should wait for actually Alex's presentation going to be exactly about that. But
yeah, so if we're doing this just solely with FreeSwitch, there's some profile settings that you can tweak, and there's actually the ability to test it too. So essentially, what happens is that in conjunction with other software, such as like ChloroSync or something like that, you can do an IP takeover, and then the databases are replicated.
Okay.
But it's a complicated thing to do. It's very hard to get working really well. I think one of the best things to do is kind of just go for next call. So like, when we had like SRV up there and after, like that can kind of, swap over on the fly. That's something that's really easy to implement and doesn't take a lot of configuration.
Nowadays, every ITSP needs to have many options regarding the horizontal scaling, which means sharing data, configuration files. We know we can do many things, let's say, by sharing a file system, even NFS, we can use Clusterfs, and all this cool stuff, cool things. But that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so something like Gluster would be very helpful, when it comes to the voicemails. Right. I mean, a lot of people utilize different methodologies too. So like, there's people using from an open source perspective. Things like SyncThing, that works pretty good.
There are great features, class 5 features, and the security features, and all this stuff. But when it comes to
yeah, so if you wanted to test it from the CLI, you just take crash, and what it'll do is it'll simulate a crash. And so that, in conjunction with some of the profile settings, you can really test that out. I think it was implemented it started in FreeSwitch version 1.2, and now we're 1.6.20. So it's been around for some time.
Do you have any plans to implement some kind of things like configuration management for large scale.
Well, you want, I'm sorry, configuration?
Yes, for configuration, config files, XML files
Right.
that right now are sitting on the file system. Maybe
Well,
configuration
so,
files sitting
yeah.
on Cassandra.
Yeah, so you can actually, you know, mod curl with that, mod curl XML. You can actually pull those configuration files on the fly. So you can make really dynamic stuff with that. That's actually something that's, you know, in the class that we'll teach. So it breaks down in multiple categories. So you have like directory view for the users, and then there's dial plan. You can do that as well. So you can actually do some really dynamic stuff by doing that.
Also look on Fusion 3DX, can give you great tools to manage those kinds of stuff.
Yes, I know. I have.
Yeah, when Fusion actually implements it though, Mark Crane, who's a really good friend of mine, he actually implements it with Lua. So he's actually generating XML with Lua and not mod curl XML. But they're both really good technologies. They work exceptionally well. They scale pretty well. Anyone else? So, anyone else want to talk about configuration or kind of what they're looking for?
That you said you were mentioning Lua. You were mentioning Lua configs for FreeSwitch to help scale horizontally. And it does seem, from what I've seen in the community, most or a lot of programmers that are writing custom code for FreeSwitch to help it do things like horizontally scale. They do it in Lua. So you might want to look at Lua as a starting point, and then see what you can pull down off of the internet. But Lua is general, unless somebody has a different opinion. I think Lua is the primary language that the developers use to enhance FreeSwitch as you start scaling.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Lua is pretty much one of the fastest of the languages. The new JavaScript library that came from SpiderMonkey, that's actually pretty quick too. But I think from a lot of the core development, like what Norm was saying, was a lot of the developers kind of jump towards Lua for sure.
Great.
Are you done?
I don't know. Maybe we'll have some more questions.
Do we have any more questions for Michael? Okay.